Xerxes I, born in 519 BCE, was the son of Darius I and Atossa, the daughter of Cyrus the Great. He ascended to the throne in 486 BCE, after overcoming a complex succession dispute following his father's death. Xerxes inherited a vast empire, the Achaemenid Empire, stretching from the Indus Valley in the east to Egypt in the west. His rule was characterized by a strong belief in his divine right to rule, viewing himself as the earthly representative of Ahura Mazda, the Zoroastrian god. This belief shaped his governance, which was both authoritative and absolute. Xerxes' most ambitious project was the invasion of Greece, motivated by a desire to expand the Persian Empire and fulfill what he believed was his divine mission. In 480 BCE, he gathered one of the largest military forces ever assembled, reportedly numbering over 2 million soldiers, to conquer Greece and avenge the Persian defeat at Marathon 10 years earlier. His forces crossed into Greece, first dealing with resistance in the form of the famous Battle of Thermopylae, where a small force of Greeks, including 300 Spartans led by King Leonidas, fought bravely against overwhelming odds. Despite their courage, the Greek forces were betrayed by Ephialtes, a local man who revealed a secret mountain pass to the Persians, allowing them to outflank the Greeks. The Spartans, along with their allies, were killed to the last man, but the sacrifice inspired the Greeks to continue their fight. After Thermopylae, Xerxes advanced to Athens, which was abandoned by its citizens. The Persian forces sacked the city, burning it to the ground, but they failed to destroy the Greeks' will to resist. In the same year, the Battle of Salamis occurred, where the Greek navy, led by Themistocles, lured the Persian fleet into the narrow straits of Salamis. The smaller and faster Greek ships decisively defeated the Persians, inflicting heavy losses and forcing Xerxes to retreat back to Asia. Xerxes left his general, Mardonius, in charge of the remaining Persian forces to continue the campaign, but the Greeks defeated them at the Battle of Plataea in 479 BCE, effectively ending Persian ambitions in Greece. Despite these setbacks in Greece, Xerxes continued to focus on securing his empire. He faced internal challenges, including revolts in Egypt and Babylon. The most notable of these was the Babylonian revolt in 484 BCE, which he crushed with a mix of diplomacy and military force. However, his attention turned inward, and while his empire continued to function, it was increasingly plagued by instability. Xerxes' reign ended violently in 465 BCE, when he was assassinated in a palace coup led by his chief minister, Artabanus. The plot was orchestrated by Artabanus, who had grown wary of Xerxes' power. Artabanus succeeded in killing the king and briefly took control of the empire, but he was soon overthrown by Xerxes' son, Artaxerxes I, who ascended to the throne after defeating Artabanus. The assassination of Xerxes marked a brutal end to a reign defined by both grandeur and failure. Xerxes' legacy is complex. He is remembered for his grand construction projects, including the expansion of Persepolis, his royal capital, and for his monumental ambition to expand Persian territory. However, his military campaigns, particularly in Greece, ended in failure and humiliation. He remains a symbol of both the power and the fragility of empire, a ruler whose divinely ordained mission ended in betrayal, internal strife, and death. Despite his ambitious reach, Xerxes ultimately proved that even the mightiest kings are vulnerable to the treachery that often lies within their own courts. Xerxes' death marked the beginning of a turbulent period for the Achaemenid Empire. His son, Artaxerxes I, inherited a throne stained by internal strife and external defeat. The assassination of Xerxes demonstrated the fragility of Persian rule, revealing the deep power struggles within the royal court. Artaxerxes, though not as militarily ambitious as his father, focused on consolidating the empire, repairing the damage done by the failed Greek campaigns, and restoring internal stability. He worked to reassert control over rebellious provinces, including Egypt, which had revolted during Xerxes' reign. The challenges faced by Artaxerxes were immense. The Persian Empire, while vast, had been stretched thin by the wars in Greece. Xerxes' efforts to expand the empire had overextended its military, and his failure to decisively defeat the Greeks had undermined Persian prestige. Artaxerxes, however, proved to be a more cautious ruler. He prioritized diplomacy over military conquest, seeking to avoid the mistakes of his father. While he maintained the empire's vast territories, he faced continued pressure from the Greeks, particularly from Athens, which had regained its strength after the Persian defeat. Over time, Artaxerxes also had to deal with the rise of a new threat to the empire's stability: the growing influence of the satraps, the regional governors of the Persian provinces. These powerful figures often acted independently of the central government, leading to tensions and rebellions. Artaxerxes sought to maintain control over these satraps by ensuring loyalty through a mixture of patronage and fear, but it was clear that the empire's decentralized nature made it increasingly difficult to govern effectively. Despite these challenges, Artaxerxes succeeded in preserving the Achaemenid Empire for a time. His reign lasted for over 40 years, and he oversaw a period of relative peace. Yet, the assassination of Xerxes and the rise of internal discord left a mark on the empire's future. The Persian Empire, though still vast and powerful, was no longer the cohesive, unified force it had been under Darius I and Xerxes. The decline of the Achaemenid Empire would continue over the coming centuries. Successive rulers, such as Darius II and Artaxerxes II, faced increasing difficulties in holding the empire together. The Persian Empire's power waned as its internal problems and external pressures grew, setting the stage for the eventual rise of Alexander the Great. In the end, Xerxes' reign and his tragic assassination served as a reminder of the fragility of power. The god king, who had once believed himself to be the divine representative of Ahura Mazda, fell victim to the very treachery and political intrigue that he sought to control. His legacy, marked by both grandeur and ruin, remains a testament to the limits of even the most powerful rulers. Xerxes' story is one of ambition, betrayal, and the harsh realities of empire, a tale of a king who sought to conquer the world but was ultimately undone by the forces within his own court. The assassination of Xerxes set off a chain reaction that ultimately weakened the foundation of the Persian Empire. Artaxerxes I, though able to stabilize the situation in the short term, inherited an empire that had been severely strained by continuous war and internal divisions. The assassination not only reflected the fragility of the Persian throne, but also foreshadowed the challenges that would plague the empire in the coming decades. As his father's ambitious plans faltered, Artaxerxes focused on maintaining control, rather than expanding the empire further. He was cautious, using diplomacy and consolidation to keep the empire intact. Artaxerxes I, however, faced constant challenges from the empire's vast and diverse provinces. In addition to managing political intrigue at court, the growing influence of local satraps posed a major threat to his central authority. These satraps, often powerful military leaders or wealthy elites, had significant autonomy and were becoming increasingly difficult to control. Although Artaxerxes attempted to rein in their power, he found himself unable to stop the creeping decentralization of the empire. His reign was marked by an ongoing struggle to balance the demands of these regional powers with the need for a strong central government. Moreover, the Greek city-states, particularly Athens and Sparta, continued to be a thorn in the side of Persia. Despite the catastrophic failure of Xerxes' Greek campaign, the Persian Empire remained involved in Greek affairs, with the Greeks themselves divided but determined to resist Persian influence. The delicate peace between Persia and the Greek states was often shattered by renewed hostilities, particularly as Greek naval power continued to grow. For Artaxerxes, managing this persistent Greek threat required a careful combination of diplomacy and military presence, though the Greeks' resistance would continue to shape Persian foreign policy for years to come. Even as Artaxerxes struggled with these issues, the internal stability of the empire began to erode further. The increasing power of the royal court and the factions within it made the possibility of another assassination or palace coup a looming threat. Artaxerxes, though able to survive numerous conspiracies and uprisings, could not prevent the inevitable decline of the empire's centralized authority. The Persian Empire continued to face increasing pressure from both internal and external forces. The constant rebellions, coupled with the inability to decisively deal with the Greeks and the growing power of the satraps, meant that Persia's days of glory were numbered. Under Artaxerxes' successors, the empire would continue to fragment further, and the rise of Alexander the Great in the 4th century BCE would ultimately prove to be the final blow. Alexander's invasion, combined with the Persian Empire's internal strife and weakening military, led to the fall of the Achaemenid dynasty and the eventual dissolution of the Persian Empire. Xerxes' legacy, despite his monumental achievements and grand ambitions, would ultimately be defined by his tragic death and the turmoil that followed. His belief in his divine authority and his attempts to expand Persia's influence to its zenith ended in failure, as his plans were thwarted both on the battlefield and by the betrayal within his own ranks. The once mighty Persian Empire, under his reign, would never recover the same unity and strength. His assassination, far from being a singular event, was merely the first crack in the empire's foundation, a prelude to a series of internal power struggles that would continue to destabilize the Persian throne for generations. Xerxes' story, though steeped in grandeur, serves as a cautionary tale of ambition, power, and the ever-present threat of betrayal. The god-king who once sought to conquer the world ultimately fell victim to the same forces of betrayal and treachery that he could not control. His empire, one of the largest and most powerful in history, would dissolve into the annals of time, but the lessons from his reign would resonate for centuries to come. His fall was not just the end of a king, but the end of an era in which the might of Persia could conquer all, except its own internal demons. The story of Xerxes' reign and his ultimate downfall is not just about one man's ambition, but about the unraveling of an empire that had once seemed unstoppable. Following Xerxes' assassination, Artaxerxes I would inherit a kingdom that was still vast in size but growing increasingly fragile. Despite his best efforts to stabilize the empire, it was clear that the power and unity that had defined the Achaemenid dynasty were beginning to erode. Artaxerxes faced numerous challenges as he worked to maintain control. The satraps, the regional governors of the empire, were becoming increasingly independent, strengthening their own armies and forging their own alliances. This created a situation where central authority, once absolute, had to contend with powerful local forces that were not always loyal to the throne. The empire's vastness, once a symbol of its strength, became a weakness as communication and direct control over distant regions became more difficult. Externally, the Greek states remained a constant thorn in Persia's side. Although the disastrous Greek campaign under Xerxes had ended with the Persians in retreat, the relationship between Persia and the Greek city-states never truly stabilized. Athens, buoyed by its naval power, and Sparta, with its formidable land forces, continued to pose a threat. Persia's ongoing military engagements in Greece, coupled with the internal strife in the empire, left the Persian Empire stretched thin and vulnerable to outside influence. In addition to the external Greek threat, Persia was also confronted with new rising powers along its borders. The rise of Macedon, led by King Philip II and later his son, Alexander the Great, further threatened the empire's stability. The Persian military, once one of the most formidable in the world, was no longer the cohesive force it had once been under Darius and Xerxes. These external threats, combined with the internal divisions and weakening central authority, left Persia vulnerable to collapse. By the time Alexander invaded in 334 BCE, the Persian Empire was a shadow of its former self. Though Artaxerxes I had managed to hold the empire together for a time, his successors faced increasing difficulties in maintaining control. The Persian forces were spread thin across vast territories, and the once proud military machine struggled to compete with the Macedonian forces under Alexander. The decisive Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BCE saw the fall of the Persian king Darius III, and with it, the end of the Achaemenid Empire. The fall of Xerxes' empire, though long delayed, was inevitable. His death, driven by betrayal and internal strife, signified the beginning of the end for the Persian dynasty. The empire that had once spanned from the Nile to the Indus, unified under the rule of a god-king, was ultimately undone by a series of missteps, both political and military. Xerxes, the god-king, whose vision had been as grand as the empire he ruled, failed to recognize that the true strength of an empire lies not in its size or its military victories, but in the unity and loyalty of its people. In the end, Xerxes' reign, marked by ambition and betrayal, stands as a tragic testament to the fragility of empires. His belief in his divine right to rule, while a powerful motivator, could not shield him from the realities of governance. The vast empire he sought to expand and protect collapsed not because of external invasion alone, but because of the internal forces of rebellion, discontent, and betrayal that he was unable to overcome. As history turned its pages, Xerxes would be remembered, not as the immortal god-king he once believed himself to be, but as the ruler who reached too far, lost too much, and ultimately fell to the very forces he could not control. His fall was not just a personal tragedy. It was the fall of an era, a testament to the impermanence of power, and a reminder that no matter how mighty, No kingdom is immune to the forces of decay, treachery, and time. Thus, the story of Xerxes, the god-king who fell to betrayal, became a lesson for rulers and empires to come. That power, when it is not tempered with wisdom and the ability to recognize and confront one's vulnerabilities, is destined to fade away.